Good afternoon and welcome to today's rousing Committee of the Whole Public Safety and Human Services Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. We are initiating the meeting this afternoon at 4:31 p.m. And in attendance today are council members David Carson, Mr. Steve Fields, Ms. Jessica Forsyth, Ms. Varisha Khan, Ms. Vanessa Kritzer, and Ms. Melissa Stewart. And I am Jerry Lee Anderson, the presiding officer for today. This afternoon, we have 7 items on our agenda, and we will begin with the item number 1, which is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion DEI Program Update with COO Files and Ms. Jan Harrison.
I am going to turn. I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to turn it directly over to Jan for her comments.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to give you an update. Next week will be my 3rd month on the job, and I can say that I continue to be excited to be here and to be able to have the opportunity to develop an infrastructure, a DEI infrastructure focused on city governance, and all what that potentially has to transform and in many ways go from good to great for the city of Redmond. So should I just talk or do you
have an update for us?
Oh.
I've got 10 minutes on the agenda for you, so can happily fill the space or we'd be happy to ask you questions.
Well, I'll start with Melissa's questions. You had some for me. My official title, my working title is DEI Program Advisor, while while for HR purposes, it is DEI Program Manager for HR purposes. Your second question was in terms of the 2023 external assessment. That is we'll be able to share it with you once we get more context in terms of the data that was collected. And so that's a work in progress. But it looks very promising. In terms of what are drivers, we listed some drivers. Drivers are actionable items, and based on the survey, there were specific feedback. And so we received the drivers in terms of how we can implement engagement. And so we're working on, the next step is to give some context, to ask and get more intel in terms of the context of the information that we secured.
Ms. Stewart.
Thank you so much. So just for the record, Jan, I'll go ahead and read my questions into the record.
Oh, okay.
Since they were referenced, I had sent along, as is common council practice, I had sent along some questions to staff earlier. So the first one, I had noticed in the memo that you were listed as a program manager, and of course, during the budget process, we negotiated for a different title. So maybe if we could go one by one, Jan, could you tell us again, it's one thing for operations and one thing for HR. Why do we have 2 titles for you?
Well, first of all, my working title is DEI Program Advisor, and that's my working title, but it also is part of my lived experience in this role, meaning that I engage and on a regular basis with the directors. So I do serve as an advisor to them. And actually today I presented my path and my journey to this work, gave them a bit of my history and my background and my inspiration and the role this work has played has been shaped by my childhood, my parents, my lived experience, my education. And so I was able to share and have an engaged dialogue with the directors today.
I'll just add. I'm going over here. Okay. So I'll just add to that. So DEI Program Manager is one that is used throughout the region. And so when they were doing the salary survey, we wanted to make sure to fulfill council's wish of kind of escalating this. So under that auspice of human resources, the salary could increase based on that title. So she does have the working title of DEI Program Advisor.
Okay, that helps explain the difference. Thank you. Just to continue reading my questions into the record, I asked about the 2023, February 2023 external assessment and whether or not council could see that. And I asked about a couple of the drivers of inclusion that were listed in the packet. So as not to take all of the time, I will just ask my burning question here, which is about these drivers. So I understand what the word driver means, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what was the external assessment and what does it mean that these things came forward? Just if there's any color you can provide at this point to this information, that would be helpful.
I think that answer could be best answered by Melissa, so I'm going to hand that off to her.
So the external assessment was done before Jan got here. So a little bit of context of that. We did an internal assessment, and then we turned around and did an external assessment. So that external assessment went out to the community through surveys of our community and conversations with our community partners, so actually interviews with our community partners. These were the things that came out as the top priority that our consultant heard at the time when it came to diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, social justice kind of concerns that the community had. As Jan said, what we're trying to dig into is the context that these came out. So what is the context behind these drivers that our consultants gathered? So that's the work that we're doing right now, is to go out to the community to try to ask. We know that cost of living is an issue in Redmond, so that's kind of easily interpreted. There's other ones that is not so easily interpreted, and we want to make sure that we get that context before we present it to council, but certainly we can present kind of the raw data to council.
Thank you for the follow-up, and I will end my time. Okay. But I will just go ahead and comment that it reads to me more like these are the drivers of exclusion that our community may have identified. So I'll just leave that there. Thank you.
Thanks for those questions, Ms. Stewart. Other questions from the council? Ms. Kritzer.
I'm sorry, I would still love a little bit more clarity on what you said around the role. So you said in order for it to go up in salary, the role had to stay at manager officially via HR, or I may have misheard you.
So when they did, every time we do kind of a new position or we relook at a position, they look at across our comparable cities and the types of positions that are comparable across those cities. And then they do a salary study. So it was our understanding that council wanted to elevate this position. So we did that, and in order to do that through the salary study, what was comparable was a DEI program manager. So that's what we comped it at, because that was the higher salary in kind of this position across our cities.
But it was a program manager before.
It was a program manager, but it was comped at, I think it was like a, I don't remember the title, but it was a little lower at the time.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarity. I think maybe there's still follow-up conversations to be had, even on the name of the position. I know we were kind of at the last minute in the budget kind of talking about all these different things and approving it, but more to be had just to make sure that we're having the support for this position that we want to see. And so glad to have you here, Jan, doing this great work. One question about the external assessment. Would love to be able to see a little bit more information from that, as well as the internal assessment. If maybe at some point in an upcoming meeting when we have a touch point on this, would be great to be able to have some summary slides of the big takeaways from both internal and external, because I think because of all the change last year, we didn't really ever get to do that deep dive on the internal.
So we did do I know at least we did a staff report on the internal assessment. It was a while ago. So.
Yeah, I think the initial, right after there was a survey done, but then there was some more internal assessment work done, and I don't think that we ever got to see that.
So why don't we do this? We can put them together, and either we can come to a committee or we can come to a study session and just go over all the information just whatever council would like.
Yeah, and we can definitely wait and see, as I know you're doing the work with Anita Page, and to be able to bring that all together so we get a sense of what did we learn from both our staff and our community and where are we going. But I would say sooner than later, it would be great to be able to just get a sense of some of the details on that and be able to have that conversation. And finally, I'll just say that this says monthly in the packet information, but quarterly on the items. So I know we've discussed a couple times the idea of just making this a monthly touch point where we don't always have to have like a big presentation, but I would definitely support continuing with a little monthly touch point on this if we can do that in this committee and the chair is interested in that.
I'm not sure I have that decision-making power, but okay. Quick question, temperature take on the item that was just proposed by Ms. Files, a study session or committee. If we do monthly committee reports, it sounds like this would come to committee for that follow-up on the internal and external. Or would you rather do a study session, folks?
Yeah, so sorry, it depends on how much you want to dig into it. So I know that we're kind of limited time in committee, so
Okay.
just however much you want to talk about it.
I would prefer a study session.
No? Yes?
If it's in bite-sized chunks that we take it on as part of the learning of all the work that you're doing, I know you have a lot ahead of you. I feel like we could look at it in bits and pieces through committee. But if everyone wants a study session, I think that's good too.
Study session or committee, or both?
I think I would support a study session if there's room on the agenda, but if it's going to be a long time out to schedule, then let's bring it to committee.
Mr. Carson?
I would concur with the last assessment, because I think, if we want to take it in little bite-sized pieces, fine, but it also depends on how much work it really causes for staff, and for the scheduling aspect of it, I think is problematic.
And I got two folks online, Mr. Fields and Ms. Khan.
I'll just jump in. I think a committee, as it's scheduled, I think a study session when there is some major decisions or upcoming decisions to be made. I don't know that I agree that we should have a study session to talk about it in general. I think we can do that through committee. But if there's some specific actions that are coming up as a result of the work, yes, a study session.
This is Councilmember Khan. I think I concur honestly with everyone, but I think with Mr. Fields probably the most. I mean, it's great to hear kind of, again, the bits and pieces, but definitely want to be able to respect staff time and of course, only when there's kind of major important decisions. So if we need to go into that deep dive, I would be okay with a study session.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
So we've got a little bit of both, and it sounds to me like we are expecting you to assign us some homework in some way, and we may be able to do, what we can do is take it offline and talk a little bit about if we do a quarterly or monthly and what that would look like with a study session, or what we would need to see at a study session as well, if that works for everybody. Thank you. This is one of the most important items on our strategic plan. So welcome for month 2 being over. Congratulations. I guess my single question on this would be, what's reasonable for us to look forward to the next time? Based on this current priorities list, what can we look forward to the next time we see you?
What do you think?
So I'm thinking the easiest thing would to do if we want to do it in mini chunks is just to go back over the internal assessment. We have all of the information, and so it's pretty easily digestible.
That sounds palatable to the folks at the table here. I'm looking online and I don't see any reactions, so that's good. No negative reaction, at least. Super. Great. Well, thank you. And welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you probably next month or within the next quarter for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Item number 2 on our agenda is with Rich Gieske and our fire save versus loss report. And Chief Shepherd, if you'd like to join us, you're welcome. saw Rich before you, sorry.
Well, good afternoon. Rich Gieseke, Redmond Fire, obviously. Bringing to you for information our first quarter of 2023 fire save loss report. Happy to report out that we are kind of on track with 2022 with total number of fires, as well as the number of investigated fires at 5 for the first quarter. We're also still in our performance measurements and our outcomes in fire containment, continued occupancy rates, values saved, and fatalities. We're still doing quite well. So all above 90% on those. So open to any questions you might have on the report.
Ms. Stewart.
Thank you so much for the update, and the slideshow is always a blast. I review it with my family because the photos are instructional.
I miss sharing the photos here.
So it looks like there are 2 involving dryers in the past quarter, 2 fires that needed to be investigated, involving dryers. Am I reading that correctly?
That is correct. 1 residential and 1 commercial.
And is there anything in terms of public education? I mean, that's in part why we have you come every quarter. Is there anything in terms of public education we should take away from that?
There is. I mean, there's obviously an ongoing issue of maintenance. And one of the things that we do quite a bit of, obviously, in fire prevention is maintenance inspections of existing occupancies. Because one of these is a multifamily residential, it's a little more difficult to get to individuals within their own homes. The commercial is a little easier in our regular commercial inspection program.
And I would just add that you don't want to have unattended dryers. Oftentimes people will turn the dryer on and then go run an errand, and that can be very injurious. So,
Thank you so much.
Ms. Forsythe.
Thank you. And I will also agree that these are always very interesting to look at. And I finally have my husband trained to not set anything on the stove from learning from watching you all. So the commercial structure fire here, I was trying to figure out where this was and what, a little bit more on the story around this building, if you could share that.
Sure. This is actually a small building. It used to be the Jitters Coffee House up behind the Sears up in Overlake. It was taken over for a while as they built the regional stormwater detention facility up there. And it's been vacant for quite a while. It was a job office for quite a while, and now it's been vacant. And it's been being utilized by homeless folks for shelter and housing. And so this particular fire was caused by a person who was in there and using some material inside the structure to basically cook a meal. And when the crews first arrived with it fully boarded up, they didn't realize anyone was even inside until they forced their way in to do the extinguishment and found somebody inside the structure. So it's not something that we have much of here in the city, abandoned or boarded up structures. Typically with the price of real estate and the pace of development, idle land and vacant structures don't last long. But occasionally we do get these, and they do tend to be a bit of a public nuisance. So.
Was that person okay?
They were okay.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions from the council on our fire safe versus loss report? Ms. Kritzer.
I have to ask, because I am curious about the story about the other fire, the one that looks like it was near the field.
This was actually a very interesting fire. So this is the first fire investigation done by one of our brand new fire investigators. It takes about 2 years for our investigators to get up to speed and get certified, and this was his first fire. So it was kind of an interesting one in that it was actually caused by fireworks. So we had some juveniles up in the area that were having fun with Roman candles and shooting Roman candles at each other. And some of the discharged fireworks got up into this genie lift up at Hartman Park and caused a little bit of a problem. So a little unfortunate.
Another important PSA, be careful with fireworks, and they are not allowed in the city of Redmond also.
Exactly, especially on New Year's Day.
Any other questions for our team from fire? Mr. Carson.
Thank you. So I had a question on the Jitters location. So has the landlord been notified that this needs to be fortified somehow?
Yeah, we do a good job working with the landlords and the property owners, as well as PD with trespass orders to help keep unauthorized folks out of those structures. We are trying to reach out to the current owners to see if we can go and get that building demolished. It's part of an ongoing redevelopment of the Sears site up there, and so I think ultimately that building will be demolished, and we're going to see if we can speed that up a little bit.
Final call for questions from the council for our fabulous fire department. Okay, excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
The rest of the show will be our police department with Chief Lowe and Captain Gately, if you'd like to join us. Would you like to come up to the front here? No, he's good. Okay. Okay, item number 3 on our agenda is 2023 first quarter police crime report and our 2022 annual report. All set?
Yep, good afternoon. So what we provided for you, much like fire, is a quarterly overview of the activity within the police department. And then, as previously discussed, the police department's annual report will be coming out on an annual basis shortly after the mayor's State of the City address. WASPC, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, is actually responsible for the official crime numbers, but those don't come out until July. I feel it's a bit late in the sense of you're getting crime information almost 18 months after it happened, because it'll be 2022's crime information that will get published in July. So we will put out our information, like I said, shortly after the mayor's State of the City to give a more timely update to council and the community. What I will advise is that the numbers may change from the official report in July versus the numbers that we put out, because as crimes get solved and or reclassified, that will cause a potential change in the numbers. Nothing significant, but there will be some changes in that official report. So looking at the calls for service for the first quarter, we're 13.4%. We saw a 13.4% increase in calls for service for quarter one in 2023 as compared to 2022's quarter one. Then looking at it in a 5-year perspective, overall, we're 15% up in calls for service. So if you look at the numbers every year, you can see that the call volume is increasing. Obviously, that has a lot to do with the growth of the city as a whole. We can anticipate the call volume to continue to increase throughout the year and the upcoming quarters. The next part looks at the arrest information for the quarter. So felony arrests are down 47.9%, where misdemeanors are up 23.4%. Overall, in that 5-year average, felonies are down about 37.5%, and misdemeanors down 10.3%. 4 years. Next one, please. Then looking at the full year crime picture. So last year we had a 17.7% increase in all crimes. We'll talk in the next couple slides about some of the particular drivers of those crimes. What I'm happy to report is that the drivers are property-based. They're not violent crimes or crimes against persons. And in the next slide, we can look and see that this is one of the drivers behind that is auto theft. If you're tracking what's going on around the state, that is a rampant problem throughout the state of Washington. For us here in Redmond, we had a 30.6% increase in auto thefts year over year, 22 to 23. And if we look at a 5-year average, 237.5% increase in auto theft. That is a rapid problem. Again, if you're kind of tracking local happenings, Hyundais and Kias are particularly problematic right now. We, like a lot of police agencies, partner with the automotive manufacturers, and they've provided us steering wheel locks. We've had a couple of events where we've passed out steering wheel locks to specifically owners of those vehicles in an attempt to reduce or diminish those cars being stolen. Next one is catalytic converters. Same thing. This is a problem throughout the region. We have seen almost a 68% decrease thus far, but again, we're 3 months into it. But looking over the last 5 years, there's a 2,000% increase in catalytic converters. It is still a problem. It is not nearly as problematic as it was last year, but again, we are still seeing it. What I can say as it relates to catalytic converter theft, overall, there's been a lot of law enforcement work, both at the local, state, and federal level in regards to this enterprise. And there have been some significant arrests made on the national level that has impacted this particular issue. It still goes on, but they like I said, in a particular case, it has made a particular dent in this industry because catalytic converters are stolen, given to a middle person, and they ultimately have to be transported overseas because the draw are the rare metals that are inside the catalytic converters, but you're not allowed to I won't say harvest it, but you're not allowed to extract those metals here in the United States, so they're going overseas, and thus the federal nexus and investigation that's impacting this. And property crime. So property crime, we're seeing a slight decrease thus far in 13.8%. But overall, over the last 5 years, we've seen a 54.5% increase in property crimes. That is typically what drives our crime numbers here. Oftentimes the property crimes, if you think, and again, if you see what's happening around the region with individuals going into big box retailers, loading up shopping carts, pushing them out full of things, those are a lot of things that we're seeing here in Redmond as well. And then the next one for violent crime. And if we look year over year, we had a 39% decrease in violent crime. But looking at it in that 5-year comparison, there has been a 31.6% increase over the last 5 years. But year to year, we've seen a decrease specifically for this quarter. And that takes care of the quarterly overview, if you will, of crime. Like I said, the annual report reflects the actions and activities for last year.
Questions from the council? Thank you, Chief. Ms. Forsyth.
So do you, is it safe to assume that some of these numbers would have been more of a curve instead of a spike, given everyone staying home throughout the pandemic? We had basically 2 years of it being lower, and then all of a sudden in 22, we kind of saw a lot of these jump pretty dramatically.
Yes. When folks were locked down, you didn't see quite as much. A lot of the property-related crimes, mailboxes, mailbox theft, or mail and package theft. People were home to get those packages. Now that people are going back to work, at least whatever, part-time, 3 days a week, whatever it is, we'll see a bit more of that. And then the real driver again for us is the retail locations, both grocery stores. I won't call it specific stores, but our other big box retailers.
And then on the solved crimes, do we have statistics around how many of these crimes have been solved, how many vehicles have been recovered? I don't think that's traditionally been a part of the presentations.
That's not part of the presentation, but yes, I can get you that information, and it will be provided, or it will be forward-facing in the dashboards that we're pushing out. That particular one is not ready for prime time yet, but shortly it will be pushed out, and the public will have access to it as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forsyth, and thank you for running the slides for that last section. I appreciate that. Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson, and thank you, Chief Lowe. 2 questions. One I always ask, that's going to be my second question. But first question is, I noticed that, that the property crime is up, as you pointed out, fairly dramatic. And then, if I remember right, somewhere in your presentation, arrests were down. Does that track? Does that make sense?
I don't know if it makes sense, but that's what I'll say that's what our realities are. Crimes are up, arrests in the felony category specifically, are down. There are a number of, drivers and reasons behind it. Going back to the property crime, if the individual is able to leave the store with the property and get into their vehicle, basically they have a free pass here. So at that point, we can do the follow-up. The detectives will take over the case. They will, follow up on the license plate, different things like that, and then ultimately seek an arrest warrant, for the individual. But again, given that it is a property crime, we're not going out, knocking on doors, executing, I'll say misdemeanor arrest warrants on individuals. So they in essence are able to rack up multiple arrest warrants in this jurisdiction or others, and it's not until they actually get arrested that they're held accountable for that litany of crimes.
So just a quick follow-up, if I'm the average resident and I saw that, I would wonder, what's going on. And as you pointed out, there's a lot of drivers. So is it possible that there were crimes in the city of Redmond, but other jurisdictions may have made the arrests? Is that, or the stats cover any of that?
No, so these stats are specific to the activities of our officers. Yes, if an individual has a arrest warrant out of Redmond, and let's say they get arrested, in Seattle, then yes, they will be held to account for that particular Redmond crime. Or if the investigators are able to, put the case together, get the arrest warrant, and again, that person gets arrested, they're held accountable, but that does not necessarily drive the arrest number here. That call for service or that report that gets taken is going to go against our overall crime numbers. It's only if we affect the actual arrest, will it reflect in our actual arrest numbers. It gets a little nuanced in the sense of if they close the case out by arrest, then it'll come out of our clearance rate. So we will see the positive impact of a person being arrested for a Redmond case, but it will not reflect in an actual arrest necessarily unless we're the ones that put the handcuffs on them.
Gotcha. All right, thanks. So second question, and I've asked this before, and so I'm not even going to pretend it's a question. I'm going to pretend it's a statement. Or I'm going to make it clear that it is a statement. Anecdotally, coincidentally, we've had an employee at our coffee shop who was a victim of a crime, a break-in at her house. My former campaign manager lost all four wheels on her BMW, which is really a setback to somebody who doesn't make a lot of money, has to rent a car, and also my son's closest friend from like when they were 3 years old was robbed at gunpoint. This was in Bellevue, Kirkland, Renton. And when I think about, having gone years and not had people that close to me, victims of crime, I have to think that, that's either an amazing coincidence or overall, we are experiencing a lot of crime. And I asked the police officer in the stealing of the wheels, because I went to help her, deal with it. And I asked the police officer from Bellevue, will this be turned into anybody on the detective investigation side? He said, probably not. And therein lies my statement. It feels to me like we need to emphasize our resources more on, as you were successful in the catalytic converters. These people are stealing things because they probably have fences that have already given them an order. Hey, we would like to get four wheels off a BMW by tomorrow. So they go out and they search for it. Somebody, they're not just randomly deciding one day, I'm going to go steal four BMW wheels. They have a fence. There is an organization that is behind most of this crime. And it just feels like we don't put enough of our resources into the investigation side as we do police on the streets and law enforcement. I get it. That's not a question. I just wanted to say that again.
Response from Chief, or thank you for your comment, Mr. Fields.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Fields.
Excellent. Ms. Kritzer, Mr. Carson.
One quick question for you. I know there's a lot of interest in our Star Chase program, and just curious, will you be coming back to share about the outcomes at a future quarterly report?
Yes, I'll have my staff add that to the next quarter's report. We are doing an internal 90-day-ish assessment of it, and we just had a conversation at our executive staff meeting today about some changes we're going to make to the program. Just in short and brief, when we very first got it, we had several early successes, but as we evaluated it, we had to balance against the way the laws are written as it relates to pursuits. And so we're going to have to make some procedural changes to how we actually utilize that system so as not to run afoul of the state's pursuit laws. Additionally, we're looking at perhaps enhancing the program. They do have some handheld launchers, and so operationally that may be more in line with what we're experiencing in the field as far as being able to deploy it successfully and not run afoul of pursuit laws.
Great. Well, if it's still in process, no rush, but just curious when we do have any sort of assessment to hear more about it.
Thank you, Ms. Kritzer. Mr. Carson.
Thank you. So I had a couple of questions. On the crime count, and Mr. Fields was talking about, is it possible that multiple counts count as well? They could have crimes of different types in the same arrest, right? So we could have, that could be kind of where we're seeing that. Someone gets arrested for DUI, but then they also have stolen property and whatever else.
Yes, so a person could have, multiple counts, charged against them, or for a single incident, it could result in multiple charges.
Right, okay. So the biggest question I had was, what takes WashBIC so long to compile these yearly stats? And are you responsible for that?
No, I am not personally responsible for it. So part of the issue is they're getting data from all across the state, and in all candor, what it is they basically have to go through and I don't want to say fix the data, but they have to go through and make sure that the data is correct. And so it takes a long time for all of the agencies, no different than different municipalities. Different agencies have different computer systems and capabilities. We have a single reporting system, but some departments are late with providing it. It's not in the right formats, different things like that. So that's the
Sometimes
behind the scenes.
needs to be trued up. I mean, because
Yes.
Data is only, you put bad data in, you get bad data out.
Correct.
So, okay, great. It seems like an exorbitantly long amount of time for yearly stats to make their way. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, and we'll close out this item and roll right into the next one, which is item number 4. We're a little behind schedule, folks, so, but we do have maybe a shorter end of number 7, which is a decision for the Blake legislative update. So item number 4 on our agenda is an MOU between the Redmond Police Department and Georgetown Law Center to provide active bystandership for law enforcement, or ABLE training. Chief Lowe.
So what this is referred to as ABLE training. It's active bystander intervention for law enforcement. It's a trainer program through Georgetown University. We are one of many agencies, or we will be one of many agencies if authorized to go through this training. It is a train-the-trainer type model. We are partnering currently with Bellevue. Once we get the numbers from Bellevue, how many people they're going to send, we will open it up to additional agencies in King County. So the cost will be, bore by the agencies depending on how many people they send. But it allows us to continue to, I'll say, add tools to our toolbox of de-escalation type training. And then by us being trainers, we can then do a lot of the training in-house based upon the Georgetown curriculum. That's the very Reader's Digest version of it.
And you're looking for consent on June 6th.
Correct. Consent on June 6th to execute the MOU for a November offering of the class.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the council on this item? Mr. Carson.
One quick one. So I presume that the fee is because I looked at their website and they offer the training itself free of charge to law enforcement, but this is so that we have trainers that do it, is that right?
Correct. So we will send a group of individuals through that will become certified in their curriculum and then be able to train internally. One of the other benefits of it is that if other agencies become quote unquote able certified agencies, but say perhaps can't afford to do it, we then would be able to partner with them and train them, in this particular curriculum.
Ms. Forsyth. I didn't see her hand seconded, so, but Ms. Stewart, if you'd like to go first, you're welcome to.
Thank you. Chief, I didn't walk in with this question, but it occurred to me as you were speaking. I just wonder, it is a program that is marketed specifically for law enforcement officials, but it also markets itself as something for community safety. And I just wonder if it's something that might be a curriculum that could eventually benefit more kinds of public safety staff here in Redmond, fire, MIH, the like?
Potentially, I think they market as community safety because it falls into the de-escalation, I'll say, arena, in the sense of kind of the premise behind it is it enables officers the tools to intervene in the event they witness a coworker, exceeding policy or that type of thing. So again, it's very specific.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Forsyth.
Thank you. I will be emailing you a couple of questions on the annual report from the last item, but since we are short on time, I'll just shoot those over. On this item, I was just interested in how this was not covered in our budget. It said it's not in the current budget, so.
In the sense of so there's a longer approval process for this. We had to get letters of support from two different community groups. It has to be reviewed by Georgetown University, et cetera. So that was not done at the time that we came forward for the budget request. Now we've checked all the boxes and we're coming forward. Got it.
So we didn't know we were going to actually get the opportunity to participate in this program when the budget was being drafted?
Correct.
Okay. And the 23,700 will be divided across us, Bellevue, potentially Kirkland, Bothell, whoever else?
Yes. The intent is, like I said, once I hear back from Bellevue what their commitment is, at that point we will open up the available slots. I believe we have up to 30 slots available. So we will have, I believe, 8 internal folks, whatever Bellevue comes through with, and then we'll offer 15 or 20 to other agencies around the region, provided they've met ABLE's criteria.
So our commitment will be less than 23,700?
Yes.
And are we fronting that money and having them pay those other cities pay us back, or do they all go straight to the organization?
We essentially will be the fiduciary, so yes, we will front the 23,700, and then we will recoup the money through the registration for the classes.
Got it. Thank you.
And as a follow-up to that, we'll see a budget adjustment sometime later this year that includes this amount.
If approved, yes.
If it's approved. Okay, thank you. Good questions, everybody. Everybody okay with this item for consent on June 6th? I see 5 of 7. Mr. Fields and Ms. Khan, let's see if we're still here with us. Looks like a thumbs up for Ms. Khan and Mr. Fields.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Couldn't find the thumbs up button.
It's all right. You can just say thumbs if you want. Item number 5 on our agenda is also with Chief Flo. It's the My90 survey trial, customer service feedback. How are we doing?
Okay, so with this is a 90-day or so trial that we're going to do to push out customer satisfaction surveys to members of the community who call in for service from the police department. We identify a list of calls. If that call type gets dispatched, then the My90 is an automated process. It will shoot out a survey for them to complete to let us know how we're doing in our service delivery.
Ms. Stewart.
Thank you so much. This looks really cost effective as long as the expectations are clear. And I think this is the interface between departments like yours, Chief, and the role that the community holds for its council. So I just wanted to put a plug in for the interface. I think a lot of folks, when they take surveys or, the feedback thing like this, they're looking for, what they're actually going to look for is follow-up. And so if there's specific instructions for how to get real follow-up if you need it, in addition to your customer feedback survey, quite frankly, otherwise they come to us and then we're coming to you. So I think it's just something to plan ahead for. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'll look at my staff member. Does that make sense?
Cool.
Okay, we're on
Awesome.
it.
Thank you so much. I think I'm excited to see the results. Thanks.
Any other questions on this otherwise informational item? Thank you for this information, Chief Lowe. We will move on to number 6, 2023-2027 Level 2 School Threat Assessment Team MOU with our community partners. And this is a requested action for consent on June 6th as well. Take it away, Chief Lowe.
Okay, so we currently partner with Lake Washington School District and others on a threat assessment team. So when threats come up from students, et cetera, they convene this group, they do an assessment and come up with a plan of action. As I'm told, we've participated in this for a number of years, and we realized that we did not necessarily have a current MOU. That's why we're before you to get all of our documents and everything in order. Like I said, it's not something new, something we've always participated in, just getting our ducks lined up very neatly now.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. I was really excited to see this, and I learned that the program is directed by a licensed social worker, which is, again, just another thing that council has been interested in seeing added to the toolkit, and it's already in the toolkit, so I do appreciate that. My question is, does it really cost nothing to participate?
Yes, it's by statute, so we are just a member of this collective, so it comes at no cost. We would do it anyway because if a threat was made, they would reach out to the police, but this here just brings multiple disciplines to the table to figure out the best solution to, I'll say, validate the threat, and as if it's legitimate, and at what level and what resources should be brought to bear for that particular circumstance.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Ms. Kritzer.
So just to be clear, is this team that comes together when there is a threat, or is there also work that is done in terms of thinking about proactive strategies together for preparing for threats as they unfortunately occur?
Captain Gately, you can join us at the table if you'd like.
They're afraid. They don't want to come in the Shark Tank. No. So as you said, so they do prepare for it, but there's meetings and conversations for pre-preparation. But then, like I said, when a threat is made known, then the group convenes and figures out how best to address it.
Well, I really appreciate this work. I will say that I the other week when Redmond High School had to be shut down due to a threat of gun violence, I think, which I'm glad nothing happened there. I did hear from quite a few parents in our community that were concerned, and unfortunately that's what we're living with right now across our nation. And so I really appreciate anything that we can do to be addressing this and keeping our kids safe.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Chief Lowe on this item? Fantastic. How are we looking for consent on June 6th, folks? We got 5 thumbs in this room. Mr. Fields and Ms. Khan, how are we doing? Thank you, Ms. Khan. Mr. Fields, you want to say thumbs?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. We're good for this item on consent. Thank you. The last item on our agenda, hopefully we'll take up the rest of our time today, is the State versus Blake legislative update. I understand there's been some action recently earlier today, and this will be with, welcome, Ms. Mayor Burney, and with Ms. Rebecca Miller as well.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Council, and I want to thank the Chair for allowing us to take a little bit of your time this evening. So, as you all know, the state did not, during session, pass a fix to Blake, and they convened a special session today where we just learned that the governor they indeed passed it, and the governor signed it. So it will be able to take effect by July 1st when the other things were expiring. So I have today Chief Lowe and our prosecutor to help us out today to talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going. And by the way, we don't know everything yet about the bill, but we will get that to you. So Rebecca, if you'd like to start.
Can I add something really quickly? Just for context, folks, we were talking earlier about potentially having to make a legislative fix here at council, and that is no longer the case.
Yes, but there might be spaces we might need to act on.
But not today.
Not today.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, for that lead up and the breaking news announcement to share. Again, I'm Rebecca Bueller. I supervise the prosecutor's office, and I have Chief Lowe with me here tonight. Our plan tonight was to update the council on the work done in the city in response to the legislature's failure to act during the legislative session to generate a Blake fix effective July 1. We had gotten here, I would direct your attention to the legislative summary and the agenda, but just as a quick debrief, we are here because in 2021, the Washington Supreme Court struck down the drug possession laws, found them unconstitutional because they lacked the mens rea or an intent as an intent crime. The subsequent legislative session to that generated what we have now through July 1st in effect, which are misdemeanor drug laws. These are the ones that require law enforcement to refer individuals up to 2 times to substance use treatment before being able to forward those on to prosecution. And so we were waiting for what we have today as an update from the state legislator as to whether there was going to be an outcome from a special session or whether it would be left to local jurisdictions to pass local ordinances to fill that gap on drug crime. As the mayor stated, it's fresh off the press. We really haven't had a chance to fully vet and debrief what it would mean for us, but the rumblings and the reviews of the news and what we have now, it seems like it will be gross misdemeanor crimes that the state will preempt this area of the law. So I will say our RMCs currently adopt what sounds like, we currently adopt the RCWs that would house these laws. So once we have time to review what the bill entails, as the mayor mentioned, we may be circling back with some cleanup, but at this time it doesn't seem like we would be needing to pass substantial ordinances to correct anything going forward. It might just be some cleanup on what we have currently passed. Chief Lowe and myself, over the last few weeks, just so council knows, have been in discussions with the city to craft our best recommendation for council if the state hadn't taken action, and to present to council a thorough and effective ordinance that would be treatment forward, that would be a good balance based on what we were seeing taken into account other local jurisdictions and what we believed would be appropriate to strike that balance of accountability and a treatment forward approach. We too were looking at our draft would include gross misdemeanor crimes for drug use, drug possession, a treatment forward approach alternative, and then the opportunity for individuals to keep it off the record, vacate convictions. It does seem like, again, in what we're seeing with this new bill, that this is mirrored at the state level. And so, again, it's likely you will probably see us again over the next month or so. We probably have to look at the requested timing that's in our current memo. May not mirror that exactly, but we will come back with any cleanup that's needed.
Great. And just for context, it does say requested action, Finance Administration Communications Committee, which is on the 13th of June, and we are not targeting that date anymore, just to clarify. Okay, great. Thank you. So that's just a correction to the agenda. Questions from the council on this item? Ms. Forsyth.
No question. Just wanted to say a gratitude of thanks to the state legislators. I know they've been working very hard since the session closed up until today when the special session opened to get the vote that happened today to happen, and the vote appears to be overwhelmingly in support of this version. So I'm excited to read it, as I'm sure you all are as well. And the additional $63 million that's going to be associated with it will be huge. So that's very helpful and very exciting.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? A very thorough review. Thank you, Mayor and team.
Thank you again for letting us bring this forward, and we will share what we learn in the next month or so.
Okay, and you're welcome to come back to Public Safety. Awesome. Thank you. With that, that is the final item on our agenda this afternoon, and if there's no items for good of the order, going once, we are adjourned.